It's a dreary, cool day in the southern mountains of Appalachia. This morning I've been putting up one of my little pumpkins. It didn't actually get fully ripe, didn't actually turn that wonderful pumpkin color that we think of. This one would have actually been like one of those light tan pumpkins, but I didn't want to waste it, so I went ahead and cut it up, put most of it in the freezer. But since it's kind of just one of those days that you want to stay inside and feel cozy and maybe bake something, I decided I would make some pumpkin biscuits. I first found this recipe, gosh, I don't know, years ago, probably back in maybe 2015, 14, somewhere in there. And it was another day like this. And I was hunting, I was probably putting up pumpkins. I don't remember that part, but I was hunting something to do with some of the pumpkins that we had grown that year. And I found this recipe on the internet, and I will link to that original recipe where I found it. And I made them, and we really liked them. Now, this is not a biscuit that I make all the time. Mostly I just make regular biscuits. But this is something that I think of in the fall because it has those wonderful fall flavors of the pumpkins and the spices and all that, and just is like an extra special treat. So I'm going to show you how to make them today. First I'm going to go over the recipe, and again I'll link to that original recipe in the description below so you can go look at it. So it takes 2 cups of plain flour or all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of ginger, and 1 pinch of ground cloves. That's all those wonderful fall flavors. 4 tablespoons of butter, 1/3 cup pumpkin, 6 tablespoons of honey, and 3/4 cup of buttermilk. 3/4 cup of buttermilk. And if you don't have buttermilk on hand, if you're not somebody that keeps it, you can make it by using milk and lemon juice. And if you do a little search, you'll find really good directions for doing that. So first up, I'm going to mix my dry ingredients. Corey was nice enough to set all this up for me, so I've already got it all measured up. So there's my flour. And I'm going to add my salt and my baking soda. She's got that together. Actually, I think she put the salt in with the spices, but either way, there's the spices. There goes the salt, I seen it. And then her little pinch of nutmeg she put in this, or pinch of cloves is what it was, not nutmeg. So she's put in the little brown one. It smells so good already. Let me get me a spoon and just kind of mix this up a little. Well, that's mixed. We're going to set it to the side and get us another bowl. Get a bowl. And in it, we're going to mix the other ingredients. We're going to put the pumpkin in there. There's the pumpkin. And the buttermilk. Tangy buttermilk, that'll be good. I'm not a big buttermilk fan as far as drinking it, but it does smell really good. And then we've got our honey. I am a honey fan for sure. Okay, now I've got the honey in there. I'm just going to mix it up a little. And then the original recipe, when I first made it all those years ago, it suggested doing what I'm doing right now and then actually getting 1/4 of that and setting it aside, and that you might need it for when you start actually mixing the flour together, like if it's too dry, actually mixing this with the flour if it's too dry. I've never had that happen, so typically I don't need this extra little bit. You can save it to put in your next batch of pancakes or anything like that. Would be good. So now I'm gonna swap places. Put my spoon there, here. And now I'm gonna cut in my butter. The kind folks at Holman's Homestead, they taught me to do this. I'd never even thought about this. So I had my butter, I needed 4 tablespoons, and I put it in the freezer just for a little bit, maybe 10 minutes, and then I grated it on my box grater, and then see, it's already in little small pieces. So I'm so glad they taught me that. I'm gonna use my spoon to get it off because it's sticking to my warm fingers. It's still pretty cold, but I'm going to use just my pastry cutter to cut it in. It makes it so much easier when it's in those little tiny pieces. hear a little bird. It's so loud it sounds like it's inside my house. But I know it's not. Maybe you'll be able to hear it. It really does.
You sure it's not in the house?
Corey's like, are you sure it's not in the house? Well, I don't think so. It does sound like it though. We may have a bird in the house. I don't think it is though. I think it's just we're just on the porch outside the window. It's singing us a merry little song though, for sure. So since the butter's so small, it doesn't take long at all to actually incorporate it. That's just the genius of doing that. Okay, now I'm going to take my pumpkin buttermilk mixture and I'm going to put it into the flour. And you just want to stir it until like a soft dough forms, and then you can, you know, put it out on a floured surface and really kind of incorporate it, or use your hands in this. Either way you want to do it. And it's a really soft kind of dough too. I'm going to go ahead and go straight to my hands, I think. You have some additional flour on hand so that you can use it. Keep it from sticking to you. I've got some right here. I'm going to move my book somewhere up there. Kind of knead it in the bowl a few times before I put it out. Get some flour out with the dough. Okay. Get me a little extra flour here and just knead it a few times. You can see all the little pieces of pumpkin in it. Makes it pretty again. Thinking of fall, just perfect for this time of the year. Now the original recipe says to kind of fold it over and then put it back out, fold it over again, and then roll it out to where you would want to actually, whatever size you want your biscuits. So I just kind of kneaded a few times. I'm sure in the beginning that I actually did exactly what the recipe said. And I've got my oven preheated to 425, and I've got a pan over here behind me that is already greased. I've already greased it, so I'm gonna get it. And I'm going to get my biscuit cutter. I was going to talk just a minute about the biscuit cutter. So this is actually like a little chopper. You could use it. At the beginning of this video, it was going really fast, but you could see I was chopping my pumpkin when I got it out of the oven. Now a lot of people ask about this one like this in the video that I did with Betty Jean about Betty Jean's cucumber relish, and I'll link to that if you missed it. But hers actually has serrated little edges around the bottom of it. Granny has one like that. She had it my entire life growing up. And if you search for a stainless steel chopper, you can even put the serrated if you want that. You can find them easily, and they're not very expensive, and they are really handy. So for mine, for this one, it's just got a smooth bottom, but it does chop. It would chop. I don't use it on, like if I'm dicing an onion, I don't use it for that. But every once in a while I'll use it maybe on nuts, or like the pumpkin this morning that I'm going to put in the freezer. But it works really good though as a biscuit cutter too, and that's primarily what I use it as. So I'm just going to start cutting out my biscuits now and putting them on the pan that I have here. And they're readily available and inexpensive and last a long time. I probably had this one the whole time Matt and I have been married. and used it for various things over the years. So I'm going to lay my biscuits, and you may want your biscuits thicker than mine, and that's okay. Appalachia is known for its big cat head biscuits, but I'm not a cat head biscuit fan. I like the outside of the biscuit better than the gummy inside, if that makes sense. And then I'm going to get my dough together and add me some more flour and do it all again. If you don't need this many biscuits, you could certainly half it. I've done that before, just half the recipe, and it works fine. We'll eat these through the rest of the day and maybe even have some for supper. Me and Corey and Katie are here today. Corey's helping me with some things, and Katie's in the basement, so she'll be hungry. So maybe we'll eat some for dinner. We might take Granny one. I've got to go see her in a little while, take her something else, so I'll probably make sure that I take her one. She can eat it with her dinner. And then whatever's left we'll enjoy with supper. Looks like I'm going to have enough for one more. And then a baby biscuit. That's what we call the leftover one. Some people call them, I've heard them called, someone told me this, I've never actually heard anybody say it, but a flum lolly. Flum lolly, so you'll have to tell me what you call the little piece of leftover. And a lot of people have told me that their families would like roll it into a rope and then bake it that way. I just always called it the baby biscuit. And I usually eat it as soon as it comes out of the oven. That's the one I figure that's my payment, I guess, for cooking. Okay, now that I've got these made, we're going to put them in the oven for about, your oven may be different than mine, but 10 to 13, 14 minutes. You just kind of have to keep an eye on them, and when they get kind of golden brown on top, they're done. So I just got them out of the oven, and they smell so good, sort of like gingerbread. And you can see they're not biscuits that rise up a whole lot, because that pumpkin's in there, I'm sure, is part of the reason. But also, I did mine thin. You can play around with that. You can see some of them. This one's got more of a rise to it than some of my thin ones, but I'm a thin biscuit kind of person, so that part doesn't matter to me. But now let's cut one open and see what the inside looks like. You can see all those little flecks of orange. That's the pumpkin. Smells so good. So as far as eating it, of course you can eat them just like you would. They'd be great. I think the original recipe said to put honey, suggested drizzling them with honey. That would be really good. You could put butter. Corey likes to just put butter on hers, and that's enough for her. I'm a sorghum syrup fan, so I like to get me a little bit of sorghum. Get me some out here. Put it on my plate. And then I like to get butter, so I've got some butter. Get me a little bit of it. And then I like to mash it up in the butter. That's how I grew up with Granny's biscuits, whether we were eating honey or sorghum, which we just called syrup. We would put our butter in it and actually just kind of work it around till the butter's all mixed in together, mashed it up together. Paul, when he was little, my brother Paul, he really loved jelly toast. That was one of his favorite things. He liked to eat jelly toast. And he would do his jelly like this too. He puts the butter in his jelly and mixes it all up. So now that I've got it all mixed up, I'm gonna smear it on my pumpkin biscuit here. This is gonna be delicious. Okay. You don't have to put the lid on it, as Pap would say. Put the lid on it. Maybe that was the bottom. Okay. Very good. Really reminiscent of a gingerbread. If you like gingerbread, you're going to love these with all those spices. And it kind of has that texture of gingerbread. I'm a gingerbread fan too. Really good, especially for this time of the year. on a cold, kind of dreary day outside with the leaves all falling. It's perfect for that. They're also really good, like maybe tomorrow or whenever, if there's any left. Slice them in two and then toast them in your little toaster oven or the oven or whatever. And just eat like that. Again, you could put butter, you could put cream cheese. Sky's the limit, but really good. So I hope you enjoyed seeing how I make pumpkin biscuits. Again, I'll put that original recipe where I learned how to make them all those years ago in the description below, so you can go check that out. As always, I hope you'll drop back by often to help me celebrate Appalachia, which is a whole lot of wonderful foodways. And it's always really rewarding for me. I grew that pumpkin, Matt and I did. And then this morning I put it, harvested it up, processed it. I baked it in the oven, scraped all the flesh out, put a lot of it in the freezer for future use. And then I was able to make something tasty too.